Hello everybody, it's Brian O'Hengisa here, coach and nutritionist at Triage Method. Today I'm going to be making the case for you in this video that actually learning good nutrition, dieting practices, the best time to do that is not actually when you're in a deficit, it's not actually when you're trying to lose body fat. And this may come as a surprise to a lot of people because, we do, of course, help a lot of people with their nutrition and their dieting habits, and a lot of people naturally have body composition goals of some sort, and within those they will have fat loss goals that they're trying to achieve. So how can I sit here and say, okay, well, what we're going to do is not actually do that initially, but we'll actually spend some time just at maintenance calories, just getting a feel for everything and actually building some good nutrition habits. And this is exactly what we'll do with a lot of people in these situations. Now, when we have a new client and we're going through their questionnaire, obviously that will determine where we start somebody. So this may not necessarily apply to everybody, but in doing the questionnaire and in talking to the client before they sign up, we're going to assess where their current dietary practices are at, where their current nutrition habits are at, where their overall skill when it comes to implementing nutrition is, because of course that's often what people want help with. Like, they hire us as coaches and nutritionists, help them with these things. But if someone is not in a fantastic place with their nutrition habits, and that's what they want help with, then it doesn't make the most sense to just go into a calorie deficit right away. So it is somewhat counterintuitive to say, okay, well, we're actually just going to wait and then we'll get stuck into it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it takes. But really, this is a good way to set yourself up for longer term success in the phase of improving nutrition, getting into that calorie deficit, and getting the actual results that you want. And the reason for this is you just have so much more leeway, so much more flexibility with the diet. You can actually make more mistakes when your calorie intake is a little bit higher. You're just aiming at weight maintenance. You don't have this pressure to be seeing the scales move or the measurements move every single week while you're trying to also get a handle on just simple good nutrition practices. So it's much easier to start working on these basic nutrition principles to say, okay, look, are your meals set up in a decent way? Are you eating, say, several meals per day? Are those meals well balanced? Are they high enough in protein? Are you choosing higher fiber carbohydrates? Are you eating enough fruits and vegetables? Naturally, this is not stuff that we expect people to just have fully dialed in right away from the get-go, but these are things that you develop and you build on over the course of a few weeks, and you get those habits into a better place. And then when you actually have those habits in a better place, you have a much better time, more success in the actual phase of dieting, because then if we spend, say, 4 weeks working with somebody on their overall nutrition habits and we get those nicely structured, then they have such an easier time transitioning into that deficit because they're already eating higher quality meals. They're already eating meals that are quite filling. They're already eating plenty of fruits and vegetables and fiber and protein. And so when you do this, it just means that moving into the deficit then is so much easier. It's a lot smoother. You have all these good principles set up and you're not dealing with issues like excess hunger, which is obviously going to come about in a deficit if your diet is not set up that well. So if we have somebody who's starting with us and their diet is not in a great place when they start, and we put them into a significant deficit because fat loss is one of their goals, they're going to have a more challenging time, and they're trying to juggle all these balls. Like, they're trying to increase their protein intake, and they're trying to learn how to improve their fruit and veg intake, and they're trying to just improve their overall nutrition habits, and they're also dealing with being a bit more hungry, and it's just a bit more challenging for the client. So if we can spend a bit of time just at maintenance working on these habits, then they can really get after it after that, say, whatever it is, 2 week, 4 week period where they're getting those habits locked in, feeling good about themselves as well because they're hitting the targets, they're building a bit of momentum, and then they can really dig into it. And if you don't do this, it also just means that the person has less flexibility in their approach. So it's a little bit harder to manage, meals out. It's a little bit harder to manage social events. But if during the period of time at maintenance, you're going to go through some of that stuff with people, then you can show them how to manage it. And again, not in this position where it's a little bit trickier, where they might be a little bit hungrier until they get their diet set up properly and they have this sort of pressure or stress of like trying to get it right and trying to see the changes week on week. So yeah, we're very happy to spend a bit of time just developing those habits. The client finds it easier. The client feels good about the fact that they're doing well, they're hitting the targets, they're learning a lot about their nutrition, and then they're raring to go. And when you do make that transition into a calorie deficit to support their fat loss goals, they just have a much easier time of it because they've already established those habits. And that's, that's what you see with unsustainable dieting practices, is that they don't build any habits. If someone does like a very aggressive 6-week transformation or whatever you want to call it, they don't learn much in terms of habits. They don't put new structures in place. They don't put new scaffolding in place for their diet and lifestyle, which is how I refer to it. So the dietary practices just end up being built on a house of cards that naturally just falls away once the willpower and the period of time is over that they spent in this really aggressive deficit. So that's why we like to go about it this way. It makes for a much more sustainable approach, and they end up in a much better place with their nutrition overall, because they will basically have this template for healthy eating that is working for them. And then you just make minor tweaks to that to create the deficit. And it ends up being a case that it's a very similar pattern to their diet that they're now doing, even though they're in a deficit, but there might be just some slight modifications to portions, or there might be some slight modifications to food selection, or, they'll be having black coffees maybe instead of lattes, for example. But the overall template looks very similar, and therefore they know they can be consistent with it and get a really good result from it. And this can be particularly important, especially when we consider our client's history. So often new clients of ours have had exposure to like really poor dieting practices, really poor nutrition practices, and they may be coming from a place where they're not in a very stable place with their nutrition, with their dietary habits. So it makes sense for us to just spend a little bit of time just kind of more relaxed at that maintenance phase, and then we can make sure their habits are in a good place, because in a lot of cases they're coming from this position of using unsustainable methods, or they just haven't developed the habits, but they're gunning for fat loss the whole time. They might end up like binging as a result of that, putting weight back on, and it just becomes a very stressful situation, and they can oftentimes just need a break from that. And let's just spend a little bit of time on good nutrition practices rather than just focusing on driving calories as low as possible, which is the place where a lot of people are coming from. Those are the main points of this video. I will add as well that, for myself as a nutritionist and a coach and my own dieting practices, that's basically what it looks like. If I'm in a maintenance phase or if I'm in a surplus, my diet doesn't look hugely different. There'll be some different foods potentially in there when I'm in a surplus compared to in a deficit or a maintenance. But really the template, like I said, or the scaffolding, like I mentioned earlier, it looks very, very similar. Like, it's going to be built on the same sort of foundation, and then it's just up to you to make little modifications, little adjustments, depending on what your goals are. So that is all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. I hope it gives you something to think about in terms of how you approach your diet, if this is something you're doing for yourself, or if you're a coach and you're helping people with this stuff. Because, you can be a bit apprehensive maybe about taking this approach with a client, because if they're signing up with you and they're essentially paying for you to help them with their fat loss goals, and you say to them, look, we're going to spend 2 to 4 weeks not doing that, you could imagine that to be a point of contention. But if you explain to the client, this is why I want to do this, if their history is relevant as well, you can explain that you're taking that into consideration, and then the client coach relationship develops. They'll trust you and what you're doing, hopefully, and they'll see good results in terms of putting their diet structure together. And then of course you can kick it up into gear to go after the fat loss when you've spent a bit of time making sure that their nutrition habits are in a good place. So that is it, guys. Please do like, follow, subscribe, etc., because we've got lots more nutrition, health, fitness content here on the channel, and we want to keep making videos and keep making helpful videos. So make sure you're following, make sure you're liking, subscribing, leaving comments if you've tried different approaches potentially with diets and this one sounds good to you, let us know. Or if you've had any other experiences, do let us know. We're happy to look at those and engage with those. So until next time, take care.